The movie starts in the year 2022 in New York City, and we learn that at that time, there's a terrible shortage of food and water because the population has reached 40 million people, with a huge increase in the population rate. Right then, we see a police officer named Robert sitting in his tiny apartment, and we find out he's poor and just scraping by, along with his assistant Sol, who used to be a university professor but now his job is sorting through written records for lectures and cases at the police station. At that moment, he's sitting there reading some records out loud to Robert, and it's clear Robert isn't interested at all. He offers Sol to eat with fiber food instead, because the food tastes awful, it's changed, and it's totally flavorless and odorless. After that, Robert gets dressed to head to work, and as soon as he steps out of his apartment, we see people sleeping in the building's entrance and on the stairs because they don't have money for rent or to buy homes for themselves. The next morning, we see a guy named Gilbert, and we learn he's living in an abandoned car. Someone named Duval comes to him, and we find out Duval is the head of security in the country, and he gives Gilbert something sharp so he can kill the famous secret lawyer William, and this is in exchange for a big sum of money, plus a ton of food from all kinds of tasty stuff. At the same time, we see William arriving at his home, which is super luxurious, and he lives there with his girlfriend Cheryl, who thanks him for the video games he bought her. After that, Cheryl goes with her private driver Tab to the supermarket to buy some food for her and William, and she pays $279 for just some really basic stuff, which shows the insane inflation that's taken over the country. Then, Gilbert tries to sneak into William's house, and the moment he sees William, he doesn't get surprised. He already knew Gilbert was coming to kill him. So Gilbert tells him that the people who sent him wanted him to deliver their message to him before killing him, that they can't take it anymore and it'll cause a disaster for them if he speaks out. William agrees with them and tells him they have a point, and he lets Gilbert kill him without resisting or defending himself. The next day, Robert arrives at William's house to investigate his death, and he talks to the building's security guard named Charles to get his statement, and then he talks to Cheryl and Tab. He sees William's body at that point, and since the house is full of food and alcohol from the rich folks' stuff, Robert takes the chance to try it out. He goes into the bathroom afterward and uses the soap there, then heads to the bedroom and grabs a pillowcase, stuffing it with some things from around the house. After that, he goes to Cheryl to check her body for any bruises or marks of beating, because that could be a motive for the murder. She tells him he was a good and kind person to her, and there were no problems between them. A little while later, the forensics team arrives and takes William's body, and at that moment, Cheryl learns from Tab that they throw the bodies into the waste disposal factory. And we find out right then that because of the population density, there's no more space to bury bodies. When Robert leaves William's house, he takes the pillowcase full of stuff with him and heads back home, where Sol is waiting. They chow down on the things he took from William's place, and among them is a file from the Fisheries Department from 2015 to 2019. They drink the fancy alcohol the rich people drink, and eat a piece of beef, so Sol is over the moon with joy because meat has become something super rare at that time. The next morning, Robert heads to work and goes in to see his boss Hatcher, talking to him about William the lawyer's murder. They learn that it wasn't a robbery like everyone thought, because nothing was stolen from his house, and they realize it's a clear assassination. So Hatcher asks what Robert took from William's house, and Robert admits he took everything he could get his hands on. On the third day, we see the streets super crowded because it's the day they distribute Soylent Green, which is a food product made to fill the stomachs of the citizens, and we learn it gives the body a ton of energy, tastes really good, and is made from the oceans. Everyone's lined up waiting for their share of Soylent Green, and we see Sol among the people in the queue. Meanwhile, Robert is tailing Tab because he suspects him, and the moment Tab leaves his house, he heads to his girlfriend Martha to question her and ask some questions about Tab. He keeps walking around the house searching, and he tells Martha their place is huge with so many rooms. She says they got lucky finding it at a good price and buying it. After that, Robert opens the door and walks out, and at that exact moment, Martha discovers that Robert took her spoon that she was eating jam with. When Robert gets back to Sol, they sit down to eat together from the veggies and food that Robert stole from William's house, and they're super happy eating because it's been years since they've had food like that. At that point, Sol tells Robert that he found a bunch of stuff in the files about William, and Sol says William was born in 1994 and graduated from law school in 1977. Sol also learns that William was the manager of a factory in Virginia specializing in making refrigeration and drying devices for processing food, and in 2018, William was a board member of the Soylent Food Companies. At that moment, Sol tells Robert that the Soylent Company has the world's entire stockpile of food, so being a member means he's a really important guy. Before Robert leaves the house, he gives Sol the jam spoon he stole from Martha's place before walking out. When Sol eats the leftover jam from the spoon, he's so thrilled he almost bursts because he hasn't eaten jam or tasted strawberries in years, since a jar of jam costs $150 now. After that, Robert goes to a payphone to call Hatcher and tells him that Tab showed up at his girlfriend Martha's place with jam, and jam costs $150, so how could a driver afford jam at that price? They realize his suspicions about Tab have grown. They decide to head to Cheryl's place to question her, but when they get there, Cheryl has her friends over and they're partying. So they take her aside and sit in a room so he can talk to her privately away from everyone, and she answers without any stress. He tells Cheryl at that time that William was assassinated for a reason and wasn't killed for robbery like everyone suspected. He asks if William had any relatives or if she knows who he worked for, and she says she never heard him mention any relatives other than that he didn't talk about work with her, but she knows a couple of his friends. She tells him that William was acting weird in the last few days, suddenly crying for no reason. At that exact moment, Charles attacks the apartment and beats Cheryl's friends, so Robert comes out of the room at the sound and asks Charles why he's beating the girls. Charles says they're not respecting the rules. Robert tells him he'll make them press charges against him and get him locked up. The next morning, Robert goes to the church, which is packed with poor people who've turned it into a shelter far from the streets. He talks to the priest there about William because he used to go to this church a lot, but the priest tells Robert he doesn't remember anyone named William. He looks sad and worn out because of the conditions of the people around him in the church, and he tells Robert he hasn't seen any rich people in the church for years because everyone who comes now is just the poor folks. But Robert keeps pushing the priest about William and asks him to tell him if William said anything to him because he was murdered. We sense right then that the priest is dodging Robert, like he knows something and is hiding it or scared to say it. So Robert leaves annoyed because he didn't get anywhere. When Robert gets back to the station at work, he learns that William's case has been closed because there's no evidence of assassination. Robert gets really pissed off because he sees all the clues pointing to someone intentionally killing William, especially since he was an important person working at an important place. He tells Hatcher that the order to close this case came from big shots in the country, and he can't reopen it because these are orders from above. Robert gets upset and leaves Hatcher, walking out in a fit of rage. The next morning, the Governor Henry learns from Security Chief Duval that Robert is going to keep investigating William's murder case because he's not satisfied with dropping it, and they tell him that Robert went to the church and talked to the priest for 20 minutes. The problem is that the priest is the one William went to and confessed their secret about Soylent Green because he wanted the priest to help him repent. At that exact moment, Henry asks Duval to handle it and do what needs to be done. After that, we see Tab heading to the church and killing the priest right then, disposing of him. And we find out at that point that he's working for Duval and Henry. The next day, we see the people gathered at the market, everyone wanting to buy Soylent Green, which looks like chips. At the same time, the police talk to the crowd through loudspeakers and announce that Soylent Green product is completely sold out, asking them to leave and come back another day. But the people collapse from hunger and poverty, and a huge riot breaks out. The police try to control the situation at that time, but it's really tough, and the people's anger is unnaturally intense. Then garbage trucks arrive and pick up the people from the ground. When Tab enters his house, he finds Robert waiting for him, and he jumps on him, beating him violently. Martha screams and gets scared by what's happening. Robert keeps asking Tab about who told him to kill William, but Tab stays silent and doesn't answer. Martha tries to step in to defend Tab, but Robert pushes her away. After that, Robert goes to Cheryl's house, and they embrace the moment he sees her. We learn there's attraction and love between them, and she helps treat his wound from a bullet that Gilbert gave him. At the same time, Sol is at the law office where William worked, and he learns from his colleagues that William found out something about the food company that produces Soylent Green, and when the owners sensed he might talk, they decided to get rid of him. All this happened because of a terrifying and horrific secret they learned about the company and the Soylent Green product. Sol breaks down at that moment from what he learned, and because of the shock, he decides to go commit suicide. We learn there's a building dedicated to suicide, which is merciful killing under government supervision. Meanwhile, Robert sees a message from Sol when he gets back home, and we learn it's a farewell because he's going to kill himself. Robert gets shocked and rushes to catch Sol, but he finds him on his deathbed. In his final moments, Sol tells Robert the secret he learned from Soylent Green. Robert is devastated by what he hears. After Robert leaves the place where people commit suicide, he sees garbage trucks taking the suicide bodies and driving off, so he gets really curious and hitches a ride on one of them. He follows it, and the truck heads to the waste disposal factory. In the factory, he's shocked by the sight in front of him, the bodies being put on machines to be turned into Soylent Green, the famous food product everyone knows and is eating right now. He learns that Soylent Green isn't made from ocean proteins like they claimed, and at that exact moment, he sees two workers in the factory. He tries to escape from them, but they chase him, he beats both of them, and falls from a high place. After that, Robert leaves the factory and calls Hatcher from a payphone, telling him he's in danger and needs his help. He calls Cheryl so she can watch out for herself and not put herself in any danger. Suddenly, armed guys attack Robert, and Tab is one of them. They shoot Robert in the leg at that point, and he heads to the church to hide among the poor people. Tab follows him and searches for him among the crowd, and the moment he finds him, he beats him and attacks. It wakes up everyone in the church, and they're all scared. Robert pulls out his knife at that time, grabs it, and stabs Tab with it. The police arrive at the place with Hatcher, and at that moment, he tells everyone about the secret he found out, that Soylent Green is made from human flesh, and there's no such thing as food made from the oceans because the oceans have been destroyed. On the way to the hospital in the ambulance, he makes sure everyone knows that Soylent Green is made from human meat. If you enjoyed this recap, hit like and subscribe to Ground Recaps. Turn on notifications for the next twist. Catch you in the next one.